during college, I didn't have any research, and I was really worried about that. And I thought like that I wouldn't get in anywhere because of it. I ended up still getting in.
So we do have some medical students with us for a medical school panel. Isn't that exciting?
Yes, it is very excited.
Yeah. Well, let me introduce these fine young people here, and then we'll get going on our panel. So we have 4 medical students, one from each year. Our first one, our MS1, is Stephen Odafe. Is that right? Is that the right pronunciation?
Yeah, that's close enough.
Close enough. Okay. Stephen, you are a first year at the Uniformed Services Medical School in Maryland. And so welcome to you here. We also have Sarah Bradley, who is a second year medical student at the Medical University of South Carolina. Hello, Sarah. Then we have Luke Hendrix, who is here in the great Lone Star state of Texas, who is a third-year medical student at Long School of Medicine in San Antonio. And then rounding out our fourth-year medical student is Yunus Tekin. Is that correct? Yunus Tekin? Good, got it right. Fourth-year medical student at Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So welcome to all of you, and I will turn it over to you now, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. So I'm excited. I love the med student panels because I once was one of you at one point a long time ago. Sarah, let's go to you. MS2 of the group. You're at Musk. You made it through first year. You've transitioned into second year now. What are the differences for you? Is it just more of the same?
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference is it never gets easier. A lot of people warned me about that. You just kind of get used to it. And I think I'm finally maybe getting used to it. The biggest differences I would say in second year is a stronger focus on things outside of just coursework. A lot of us have started doing research, getting involved in more leadership positions. I think those 2 would be the biggest so far, but I'm happy to be out of first year. I won't lie. The final push through preclinical is looking good. Hopefully getting to the other side soon.
Survival tip that you could give students going through first year?
Have a strong support system within your class. Get close with your class as much as possible. We always joke it's trauma bonding. It's really not that bad, but get close with your class. I personally live alone because that's how I work best, but I go out of my way to go and study on campus so I could be around people as much as possible, which really helps me. And a steady workout routine will save you. Yeah. Exercise is incredible. We live in a great city in Charleston where we have great weather kind of year round. So a lot of us go on walks like daily, sometimes multiple times a day. You know, people joke about hot girl, like mental health walks.
All right. Mental health walks. Did you hear that, Luke? Hot girl mental health walks. I hope you are doing them. Luke Hendrix, you are a third-year medical student at Long School of Medicine. The transition for you going from preclinical years to now into your clinical years, how has that transition been for you?
It's been good. So I've done 2 rotations now. I've done family medicine and psychiatry. I did family a little early, and so I've actually been on a 6-week break between rotations. And so I've been going into the orthopedic call room and helping out with some trauma cases and stuff like that. So it's been really good, like getting out of the books and just like kind of getting my hands dirty, so to speak. But yeah, so you still have to learn, of course, and you still do a bunch of like UWorld and Amboss questions and stuff like that. But it's I like it a lot more because you have these clinical experiences that you can kind of refer back to when you're going through questions and like, oh, I've seen that before. So it's like makes it a little bit easier to remember. But yeah, it's definitely interesting, and you definitely don't necessarily feel prepared for it. When you're first starting your clinical rotations, you don't necessarily feel like you know what you're doing, but over time, as you get more experience, you feel a little bit more comfortable, and you kind of just have to put yourself out there and give it your best shot, and eventually things kind of start happening.
Yeah. What does your schedule look like?
So right now, I've been going in at nights. So I've been going in around anywhere between 7 and 9, and staying anywhere between 12 and 6 in the morning. And so I just go in overnights, and then during the day, after I wake up, I work on research and keep up with Anki cards and stuff like that. So still very busy. I say that I have a 6-week break, but really it's as busy, if not more busy, than when I'm in a rotation, because at least in the rotation, you have a set time where you're going to clinic, and then the rest of the time you study, and then you have weekends off.
Yeah. Weekends
are like the most busy days for orthopedics. And so that's when I've been going in. So it's been pretty busy, but I've been enjoying myself quite a bit. So
yeah. Interesting. All right, Stephen, we got you back. How's the audio? We good?
Hey, do I sound better now?
Yeah, you sound good now. We're there. So this transition for you from non-medical student to now first-year medical student, what has that been like? Many call it a fire hose of knowledge coming at you. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's going on there?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's been hard, firstly, because regardless of what happens in your personal life, from moving from one city to another, you still have to wake up and do your 5 lectures and relearn the amino acids that you tried so hard to forget after the MCAT.
Surprise, they're back.
It's not the most difficult content, but it's a lot. And that's a lot to balance. And that's been what I've been doing for the most part, or trying to do.
Yeah, and so you're a little bit unique being at the military medical school, as it's kind of known in layman's terms. What difference do you think you have compared to other first year students out there?
There's definitely the big part where I put on a uniform, and I'm an officer in the military, in the Army specifically. I think the main difference for me is the big emphasis on what we call TC3, or military and emergency medicine. So it's an addition to everything. And pretty much it's like what we're trained for is not just to be a physician, but to be a physician for the soldiers that we treat. And that looks very different from the civilian population. Austere environments is a big thing that comes up a lot when you're interviewing for the school or you're in the school. But yeah, I think that's the big difference. Everything else seems pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's fun, but it's a lot. As you mentioned, right? It's not as deep as your undergraduate classes, but it's just a lot.
Right.
Well, thanks for working out the tech issues. We'll have a lot more questions for you. Yunus, as we come to you, you're the 4th year of the group. Applications to residency are open now. What is 4th year like for you? Are you just chilling? Just working on essays? What does that look like?
Hi, pleasure to be here. I was wondering if you guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. My 4th year is actually a bit difficult. So luckily I got all my essays done and finished about a month and a half ago. But I'm doing audition rotations. So I'm going from rotation site, like different hospitals, different programs each month, and I'm doing 5. In fact, it is hectic. I'm living out of my car pretty much, but I'm staying at Airbnbs, and I don't have Wi-Fi, so I'm at a cafe.
Here we are. So Luke talked a little bit about his life as a 3rd year student. You as a 4th year, I think a lot of people think about fourth year. I mean, I think about fourth year is it's a lot of extra sitting around, a lot of extra. I mean, you're doing rotations and stuff, but you're really focused on trying to match into your residency of your dreams. As you are looking at your audition rotations and everything going on, do you think it's really just more of third year that kind of schedule wise and what you're working on, obviously on top of the ARIS application?
So I think it's a little different. Third year seems to be a bit more scheduled. Like you'll go from rotation to rotation, and you have like a set schedule. But for me, so I'm applying general surgery. Whenever my preceptor's on call, I'm on call. When they're not on call, I'm still on call because the residents are on call. So the schedule is just really hectic. But the upside of that is I don't have to be doing UWorld and Anki and Amboss like I did third year.
Yep.
And I'm happy I finished my applications a bit earlier. So I'm kind of, when I'm not at work, I'm kind of just hanging out.
Yeah.
So yeah, the sitting around thing, it's either you're going 100% or 0%.
Yeah. So are you're done with step 2 at this point, or level 2?
Yeah. So I took both step 2 and level 2.
Okay.
It helps to be a bit more competitive applicant. Some programs won't look at level 2. They'll look at them, but they'd rather have a step score.
Yeah. Sarah, coming back to you as the second year student, step 2 or step 1 rather is now pass fail. Some medical schools are doing weird things with the step exams, like combining step 1 and step 2 together, saying, hey, just take them at the same time, or getting rid of dedicated time for step 1 and potentially facing ramifications of students failing step 1 because they didn't keep the respect for it up enough. What is your school doing in terms of dedicated time for step 1 studying? What are you hearing from other students around the country that are second year students?
Yeah, I have actually heard a lot of what you're saying about them almost completely getting rid of dedicated. I've heard things such as 15 days of dedicated time, which I just think is insane. Personally, though, at my school, I think they saw last year when it first went pass fail, there were some students that maybe kind of took that as like, oh, pass fail, not that big of a deal. And we did have a few more students fail than we normally do. So I think they're kind of coming in hot with us this year and making sure that we know it is still a serious exam. And we've had a lot of information sessions over the summer. We go through the summer, our curriculum. So we had a lot of information sessions over the summer, as well as beginning in the fall, about building a schedule and things. As far as dedicated time, they did shorten it a little bit for us. It's around 6 weeks right now. It used to be a little bit longer, but they've kind of pushed back our whole curriculum to then give us more time for step 2 on the back half. Okay. Because the whole idea with step 1 going pass fail is that now step 2 is going to be that new numeric number that they're going to judge everything by. So our school wanted to give us kind of more room to study
in my opinion, was the dumbest thing they could have done. Like, let's make step 1 pass fail, but keep step 2 scored. It doesn't change anything. It just puts all the weight on step 2 instead of step 1. And it doesn't allow now students who maybe struggled with step 1 to do well on step 2 to potentially make up for that, which is what I did. I scored, I don't know, like just over 50th percentile for step 1. And I scored 99th percentile on step 2 saying, hey, look, I can do this. I just didn't do well on step 1 because I didn't understand how to do well on step 1. And I don't know. It's like, make them all pass fail. Just go all pass fail and let the residency directors figure out something else to do to pick students. Yunus, as you're looking at fourth year now, and looking back over your 3+ years as a medical student, what is the biggest tip that you could give anyone going through this process to survive?
I think my biggest tip would be to find a good group of friends and look out for one another and help each other out at all times. I'm lucky to have this group of friends. There's like 6 of us, and we're always sharing resources. We're always sending each other reminders, like the ERAS supplementals due today. And every day in my group chat with my friends, it's like ERAS due Friday, and it's like Monday, ERAS due Friday, Tuesday. And it's just small stuff like that that I think will get you through the difficult times. I think someone mentioned trauma bonding.
Yep.
Hate to use that, but it's definitely when you go through difficult times together, it makes you stronger. And having that good group of friends, that good group support, I think is something that is just definitely underrated. So when you get to medical school, make some friends, and if those friends are solid, keep them.
Keep them. I'm wearing my collaboration, not competition shirt on purpose. I'm a huge believer in it, and so it's definitely a big thing. Luke, what do you think your biggest tip would be to survive medical school? I'm not even talking about thriving. I'm just talking about surviving.
Yeah, I think it was already mentioned, keeping like a good fitness routine has been really helpful for me. And then just taking everything like one day at a time. You can't look too far ahead into the future. And I've said this, since college. If you think about like, oh, I've got to do this 4 years of college, and then 4 years of med school, and then 5 years of residency, and then 2 years of fellowship. It's like thinking about that all at once is just so overwhelming. You have to take it one step at a time. Another thing I would say is like get involved early. It's a lot easier to do a little bit at a time earlier than it is to like put it off, and then you get to the later part of school and you're like, okay, now I have to like do all this like crazy stuff to get the things that I want to get done. So start kind of working on research and volunteering and just shadowing and stuff like that early on in school. Obviously, like don't overextend yourself because grades are important as well, but getting involved early is a big thing.
Yeah. Stephen, for you, how did you make the transition to first year, and what tips would you give to someone with that transition?
I think so. Firstly, I want to say that I forgot to give the disclaimer. My school made me do this. I'm not speaking for the United States Army, nor am I speaking for USIS. But I do want to give a big shout out to Blueprint. So my school is asynchronous, and I studied with Blueprint. So the videos, the same way my school presents the information that we have to know for our exams is the exact same way it was on Blueprint with the videos. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice for transitioning. Just use Blueprint. And then secondly, just be financially ready. Aside from that, I think I still have a lot to learn. But those are my advice just from my 1 month.
What do you mean by financially ready?
So there's a lot of things that people don't tell you when you're applying to medical school. Firstly, I think it hits at first when the MCAT comes around and you realize how much the prep material is for the people that do use like Blueprint for perhaps. And then when the application comes around, there's the price of that. And then when you actually get into medical school, there's moving to a different city if you have to, getting an apartment. For people like me, I've pretty much never lived alone in this country. So that was a lot. I didn't realize how much rent was or how much groceries were, or, just buying professional clothes. In my case, buying the uniforms. And those things add up.
Yeah. But you get paid. You get paid to go to medical school. That's very
you get
different.
Paid eventually. You get paid eventually. Yeah.
Awesome. And Sarah, for you, what is your biggest survival tip?
Biggest survival tip, again, like people have said, exercise routine, find a good group, like I said earlier, in your class that you can relate to and kind of bond with over this experience. And I would say do not compare yourself to others. I know you say this all the time about the pre-med process, but that continues even in med school. You think that you get in and you're just going to be, oh, I'm in med school. I don't have to compare myself to these people anymore, but it only gets worse. You're constantly thinking about who is doing more research or who is involved in more things. Don't do that. Everyone will get where they're meant to be if you just kind of keep your head down in that sense and do what you're passionate about and what you think is going to get you to where
Luke,
you want to be.
What is something that has surprised you about your journey through medical school?
I would say probably just sorry, there's some construction going on behind me, so if you can hear that, apologies.
Yeah, you're good.
But yeah, I think I expected it to be kind of just miserable all the time, like where you're just like buried in work all the time. And it really hasn't been like that. I've had plenty of time to do the things that I want to do. And in fact, even when it's like crazy busy and like, you don't feel like you have any time, I think it's really important to take the time for yourself, because if you're not taking any time for yourself, you're probably not operating at like full capacity. And so you really are detracting from the amount of stuff that you can do. Whereas if you just, take a little bit of time, take a day off or something, you may be able to function a little bit better going forward. So I would say, yeah, just like, I thought it would be a lot more like every day. And, it's definitely is a lot, but you get used to it and you kind of find ways to optimize the way that you approach things. So,
yeah. Yunus, what's something you wish someone told you about medical school, about this process?
That it's not going to be as bad as you think. So I didn't have the best MCAT score, and I was really worried going into medical school. I thought, I was just going to get lost in the weeds, and there was a lot of self-doubt, but I think once you get into the groove of things and realize that you're there for a reason, and an admissions committee looked at your application, interviewed you, and selected you, that's enough reason for you to be there and for you to succeed. So it's definitely challenging. It's not easy whatsoever. You're going to be pushed to your limit all the time, almost like every day, but know that you're there for a reason and you deserve to be there and to keep working hard. I think it took me some time to get over that self-doubt that I had going into medical school and the anxiety of medical school. And now it's just like any other day. It's like you wake up and let's go.
Yeah. Wait until next year when you're an intern. The self-doubt comes back really fast. And Luke, I'm sure you can potentially attest the self-doubt that you may have had, and that I'm assuming a lot of us have, walking onto campus for first year, going through those classes, like, did I really get in here? Are they gonna come find me in the classroom and go, haha, just kidding, we mistakenly accepted you? It comes right back clinical years where you're like in the hospital going, I don't think I should be here. I'm not ready for this.
Yeah. So funny story. When we would get our grades for things, we had these like exam numbers, these specific numbers that, they would have that number, and then they would have your grade or whatever next to it. And mine was 404. And I was like, see, I knew it. I wasn't supposed to be here. Like the not found code or whatever that you see.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely still struggle with that to this day. Just like a little bit of like imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not like smart like those people. Cause like it was already said, like when you get here, you don't stop, like the comparisons don't go away. And if anything, they get worse because you're here with like the best of the best, the people whose applications are selected over everybody else. And so, if anything, it just amplifies, you have people from like Ivy League schools, and you're like, how I can't compete with that. But, you just, like I said, take it one day at a time and just work hard. And I think if you work hard, you can do well and eventually figure out that like, okay, I do belong here and things are going to be all right.
Yeah. Love it. Stephen, if you could change one part of this process of getting into med school and maybe being a medical student, what would you want to change?
So I'm going to speak in general, and then for my institution specifically and my experiences. In general, coming from Nigeria, and then I actually transferred over. So I didn't know a lot about the application process. It was through the constant messages that I sent you on Instagram and then some of my friends that I eventually learned and fell upwards to where I'm at today. So I wish there's more informative messages out there, just more general education. And then secondly, the little funny part of officer training school is a month before you go into medical school, you do this thing called officer training school to join the military, and you do push-ups at 4:30 a.m. for a while.
I remember those days.
Yeah. Aside from that, I love every other part of it. It's fun.
Yeah. So your advice, either do really well at push-ups before deciding to do the military medical school, or don't do the military medical school.
That's pretty much it.
Exercise at 4:30 in the morning. Who's crazy enough to do that? Sarah, what would you change about this process?
About the process as a whole, I think we could change a lot, to be honest. I wish it wasn't such a financial burden to get to where we are all today. Medical school, the price of medical education alone is obviously a lot, but outside of that, you talk about it often, the price for just taking the MCAT alone, and then materials to be able to do well on the MCAT. It's kind of upsetting how not accessible those things are. So that's one big thing I think I would change about the process of getting into medical school. And then as far as in medical school, this process, there are talking about recently some changes to the match process. And I think that if those changes happen,
I'm interested to see. And it's not really a topic for today. These changes to the match process, I don't know how much they'll help or not, that double match versus scramble, slope, whatever. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Luke, what's one thing that you would change about this process?
Make step scored again, honestly. For me,
really?
I do. Yeah. So I have typically done well on standardized tests. And so, I feel like it's easier to distinguish yourself. Whereas now it's going to be a lot harder to now it's all on step 2, which is exactly the thing that they were trying to prevent, was like putting pressure on one test score.
Yeah.
And so now it's just shifted to step 2, which most people do well on anyway. And then, so it becomes even harder to distinguish yourself with step 2. And I guess that's kind of just like not addressing the real problem, which is like the standardized testing in general. But for me, in my current situation, that would be something that I feel like would be beneficial. But yeah, I don't know. I guess probably comparison, that it's like you're constantly being compared, and constantly so we have these things where you like do these clinical scenarios, and then they're not graded, but you're like compared to your classmates, and so it's just like constant comparison, which I guess is unavoidable in med school, but it does add a little bit of stress.
Yeah.
But
yeah, got it. We'll open it up to questions here in 1 second. Yunus, I think you're the only one that hasn't answered. What would you want to change about this process?
I think the financial burden is pretty high. So I qualified for the AAMC fee waivers.
Yep.
I don't know if the name has changed in the past few years, but if your family meets a certain threshold for an income, below the threshold, you get to apply to some schools for free, and it's reduced MCAT. I think honestly it should be totally free, but maybe repeat exams you can pay for. So it kind of maybe ups the ante for the first one, so you don't have to pay for the exam in general, because it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I worked as a lifeguard and a camp counselor, so I can afford to register for the MCAT. And albeit I didn't do so great on it, but I think I bounced back with STEP and Comlex. For the STEP, even though if you don't have like a good MCAT score, that's honestly not a good predictor of how you can perform in medical school.
Yep.
Kind of like how you mentioned, you were 50th percentile for STEP. I jumped up to 90s for step 1 and step 2 from a 50th
Show
percentile
off.
MCAT. So it's like, yeah, but it's kind of just to go to show that even if you don't do so well in your MCAT, and if you can't afford to take the MCAT and you take it once, you can still go.
They're very very different tests, how they're structured and what they're testing. And yeah, so I'm not the biggest fan of the MCAT, how it's structured and how it tests you, but it's the devil we have to deal with at this point. So let's open it up to some questions from the audience. Morgan, what do you think helped your med school applications stand out? I was specifically avoiding this question. Who wants to say potentially what helped them get into med school, do you think?
So the school that I attend has a huge focus on community outreach. It's almost like it's expected, but it's not actually mandatory. Everyone just does it. It's like your weekend off after an exam, everyone's just volunteering. It's like, whoa, what's going on here?
That's cool.
It's pretty, starting off, and then you kind of get into a rhythm. And I highlighted that in my personal statement in my application. Like I would volunteer at soup kitchens on Wednesdays for like 2 years, and it was fun because I got to cook and listen to music with all the volunteers and just have a good time. And it's like, whatever you do, highlight it. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to be doing like groundbreaking research or whatever it may be. Just do something, stick with it, and then show that you're passionate for it and how it affected you and how it made you a better person and how it prepares you for medical school in the future. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Next question. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
So for me, I don't know that I had much that made me stand out. Like I played rugby, which was, I guess, different. And I was not in the College of Natural Sciences. So I wasn't like the standard like biochem or anything like that. I did kinesiology. But I think one thing that I did want to say is during college, I didn't have any research, and I was really worried about that. And I thought like that I wouldn't get in anywhere because of it. And it didn't, I ended up still getting in, and so just wanted to make that, bring that up and kind of quell anybody's fears who is like worried about not having research. So,
shocker, research isn't required. Awesome. All right, what else? McKenna, what should pre-meds look for in their future med schools that a lot of them don't even think about? Sarah, did you have anything you were looking for specifically when it came to picking med schools?
I think when it came down to the ones that I was accepted to, not necessarily when I was just making my list, I looked at how the students acted on student panels. A lot of the times on interview days, there's student panels. And I remember specifically one school that I was interviewing at. The people on the panel were just talking about how miserable their experience was and how they cried all the time and things like that. So I was like, okay, maybe I don't necessarily want that at the top of my list. And then also I looked at the way curriculums were set up. My school, we only have an exam every like 4 to 6 weeks at the end of a block, wow, which I really enjoy for the way I structure my studying, where some other schools have exams every week or every other week, which I just don't think would have.
Yeah. That seems more standard is the more frequent exams. Anyone else on what you were looking for in a school?
Yeah, I actually, so I wasn't necessarily like looking for this, but when I did my interview here, I really just like felt like I got along really well with the current students, and that they all seemed like pretty happy and were talking very highly of the school, which most people at most schools will talk highly of it, but you can kind of tell when they're being like real about it, and when they're when they're like somebody that you would get along with. And I got like a really good feeling about this interview, and so I think that's something you should like keep an eye out for, is like how you feel in the interview, and like whether you could see yourself living in the city, whether you could see, yourself being classmates alongside some of the people that you meet.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Next question. Kinsey, did any of you take gap years? What did you do during that time? Any gap year folks?
Yeah, I took yes, I took a gap year. I was a medical assistant for an interventional spine doctor. It was a great experience. I encourage everyone, if you're thinking about it, to take a gap year. I have real life experience for it, and I think it actually gave me almost an upper hand coming into some clinical experiences my first year, because I was comfortable talking to patients. I was comfortable doing physical exams because I had done it for a year straight. With that said, I've said that to people and then they thought they absolutely had to take a gap year to get into med school. That is not the case either. I just think it's a good experience.
And did you do that and work as an MA because you thought you needed more clinical experience to make yourself more competitive, or did you do it just to take a break from school? Why did you do that?
I honestly had a decent amount of clinical experience before that. I needed to fund my application cycle, so I knew I was going to have to work that year. I also was taking my last MCAT attempt a little bit late in the year, before if I were to apply straight out of school. So I knew I was going to have to take a gap year for the sake of the MCAT. And then, I kind of just wanted a break and to live some real life experiences, pay bills, live on my own, make money to support the application cycle and support me.
And Luke, you mentioned you took a gap year as well.
I did. So I took one gap year and I was a scribe at a neurology clinic.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily not in the emergency department. It was a lot better hours and everything. So, but I thought it was a good experience just to kind of get that clinical experience that I didn't have to that point. I think part of the reason was I felt like I needed the clinical experience and it would be like look better on my application. And then part of the reason was I wanted to make sure okay, I'm going to work in this clinic and I want to see kind of what medicine's like on a day-to-day basis and make sure because I knew at the end of that year, if I still wanted to do med school, then it would be the right choice for me. And so after that year, I was like, all right, yep, this is what I want to do. And so ended up doing it and happy that I did. So
nice. All right, next question. Deanna asks, where did you look websites to see what types of support, mental health, students with kids, underrepresented, etc., are available to the students at the schools you applied to? So a little more school research stuff.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, so I think for this one, the school's website is always a good start, firstly. And I think that's a little obvious, but when I say the school's website, I mean dig deep. There should be no link left unclicked. And that was my take going into it. And after that, then other websites that, they're kind of controversial, but I use Student Doctor Network and Reddit because you see students make threads about the school. Yep. So I wouldn't do that to find out where they are in the application cycle, but I would do that to see what people's real experiences are at the institution. Those are some of the things that kind of helped me.
Yeah, I love those school-specific threads, especially on Student Doctor Network. I know, shocker, I'm recommending Student Doctor Network. The med school side of it, though, not the pre-med side of it. Go to the med school side and go to those school-specific threads where the students are there. But always, always, always take everything with a grain of salt because complaints are almost always louder than the praise. So people love to go on and complain, and misery loves company. So there's always a lot of piling on those threads. But just remember that's just a small subset typically of everyone at that school. Any other interesting ways of doing research from any of you?
I would say,
Yunus, go ahead.
Sorry. I would look at their Facebook or Instagram as well. Sometimes some schools have awesome social media accounts, whoever's running them, is doing a great job, and they highlight student experiences and just kind of the fun side of the school, what students do, volunteering events, kind of mental health awareness. If they have my school brings in puppies every 2 weeks and you pet puppies, and I did that all the time. It was awesome. It gets the job done, but I would check that out too, and obviously check their websites out. And that's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Puppy petting for the win. Sarah, what were you gonna add?
I was gonna say that when you're looking at the website, some of these things can kind of be hidden in different ways than you would expect, as far as resources and support for different types of students. I think it's important Usually every website has a demographics of the current class and past classes.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, Sarah, Luke, and Yunus, thank you so much for joining, sharing your experiences going through medical school, being in medical school, the process of getting into medical school with everyone watching. I wish you the best of luck on your med school journey, your residency journey, and your future career as a physician.